Good to go.
All right, thank you, Dave. Good morning. This is a convening of the Massachusetts Gaming Commission. We hold these meetings publicly and virtually, so we do need to do a roll call right off the bat. Good morning, Commissioner O'Brien.
Good morning. I am here.
Good morning, Commissioner Hill.
Good morning, present.
Commissioner Skinner is out today, enjoying some good vacation time, and Commissioner Maynard.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I'm here.
Okay, so we'll get started. Calling the public meeting number 447 to order, and Commissioner Hill, you have some minutes for us.
I do, Madam Chair. I move that the commission approve the minutes from the November 10th, 2022 public meeting that are included in the commissioner's packet, subject to any necessary corrections for typographical errors or other non-material matters.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? I'll just point out that I was out a good portion of that meeting, and then I was able to join at a certain point. So I think in the past, perhaps I'm committed to join, turning to all of you for guidance to the extent I was there, or do I abstain altogether?
No, I think I've had this happen and I just say yes, as just so much as I was there. And we have
Okay.
a quorum without you, so.
That's right. I just didn't want to just abstain because I know that I was there for a good portion. All right. So with that said, Commissioner O'Brien,
Aye.
Commissioner Hill,
Aye.
Commissioner Maynard,
Aye.
and to the extent that I was there, I think it's addressing a medical appointment. I joined late. I am affirmed as well. So three plus. Okay, thank you so much. All right. Anything else, Commissioner Hill?
Not at this time, except to say we are feverishly working on the other minutes and looking forward to bringing some more before you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, and excellent job. Very thorough, of course. All right, then we're turning to Chief O'Brien. We have a licensing matter.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. We have a request from Encore Boston Harbor to amend their beverage license, and Dave McKay, our licensing supervisor, has prepared the materials for you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Just wanted to confirm everyone can hear me okay?
We can.
Oh,
Excellent.
Alrighty. As Kara noted, Encore Boston Harbor has applied for amendment of its gaming beverage license to add a new license area. The license area's name, or venue, I should say, will be medium rare. The commission's been provided documents in your packet starting at page 3 regarding this application amendment. As discussed therein, the application was reviewed by the Division of Licensing. The scope of the review also included verification pertaining to the license area manager, and an on-site inspection was performed by Louis Lozano, IED Casino Regulatory Manager. The licensing division worked with Juliana Catan-Zariti, Executive Director of Legal at Encore Boston Harbor, to obtain the necessary information related to this request. I'm happy to try and answer any questions that you may have, or go through the memo that is in the packet in any greater detail based on your preferences, but this is the request before you. Juliana and Louis are also present on this meeting in case you have any specific questions for them. And we are asking for a vote from you on this matter, and our recommendation is to approve the request.
Good morning, Juliana. Nice to see you.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Nice to see you as well.
Okay, great. Questions for Louis? Commissioner Hill.
Madam Chair. Hi, Juliana. Can you just give us a brief overview of what it's going to be and what type of restaurant it's going to be and all that good stuff?
Good morning. Sure, I can. So this is adjacent to rare, medium rare, it being. So it's meant to complement that outlet. It's sort of a bar with small bites. So there'll be a raw bar, a small bar menu, and then it's mostly a cocktail lounge. So it's adjacent to rare. I don't know if anyone recalls, it's where originally when we had opened, we had a coffee outlet there. It was called Brew. And then I think for a short period of time in between COVID and now. There was we used it for excess retail space. So it's now been transformed into this outlet.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Juliana.
Commissioner Hill, you like the name, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. All right. Further questions for either Louis or Juliana or Dave or Kara?
So it just Louis and whoever did the walkthrough, just want to confirm that in terms of securing any of the liquor, et cetera, there's no concerns at all about bringing it in from back of house and securing it, nothing like that, right?
Yes, correct. I personally conducted the inspection for the security and the surrounds for this area, and personally, no concerns.
Great. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? I have an administrative question because I'm thinking this might be the first alcohol beverage certificate that we've seen for a while. So we have a new executive assistant and then Grace, who's new to us as well. Kara, will this be a new individual certificate? And then do we also have to amend the one that has all the licenses on it?
So we will, medium rare will be having their own license within Encore Boston Harbor's license. So this is just an amendment to the existing overall license held by Encore Boston Harbor.
Okay, so no separate one, but just the overall.
I can actually, sorry.
Thank you, David. Thank you so much.
I'll quickly jump in there. So to answer your question, Chair, the answer is yes. Medium rare will have its own licensed area certificate, which will be posted in their respective locations, similar to all licensed areas. And then we'll also have to update the master beverage license for the property to now include this change.
Okay, all right. So could you just make sure that you coordinate that through Grace and then CC Trudy, and we'll make sure to get that done because you have an opening date, right?
We do. It's our soft opening is next Tuesday, the 11th.
Yeah. So, so that's strictly administrative, but I am thinking about the fact that there's a holiday and everything, and we want to make sure to have that work done.
Sure.
Okay. And no issues from ABCC, right? Am I adding a C? Is that the right? From the Alcohol Beverage Control Commission. No concerns, Louis?
No concerns related to the ABC.
Okay. All right. So you need a vote. Do I have a motion, commissioners?
Yes, Madam Chair, I move that the commission approve Encore Boston Harbor's gaming beverage license amendment request to add medium rare as a new licensed area in accordance with GLC 23K Section 26 and 205 CMR 136.03 and 136.04.
Second.
Thank you. Any edits, questions, comments? Commissioner O'Brien?
Aye.
Commissioner Hill?
Aye.
Commissioner Maynard?
Aye.
I vote yes. Okay, 4-0. Thank you so much. And thank you for the good work and to Encore Boston Harbor. We know that you were working on this with the licensing department and happy that we could make it all work out. To the licensing department, thank you for your ongoing, very nimble, very responsive, and very thorough work. So thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you, Juliana, and thank you, Louis.
Thank you very much. We so appreciate you taking the time to do this for us this morning.
Excellent. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Okay. So now we're moving on to item number 4. I'm going to turn to Director Van. You've got some house rules for us.
Yes. Good morning, Chair, members of the commission. I have with me today Sterl Carpenter, the operations manager of the Sports Wagering Division, and we have various house rules to present to you today. Mr. Carpenter?
Thank you, Bruce. Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Today we have house rules for 4 operators. In your memo packet, it starts on page 33. WinBet has proposed a change to their house rules. It's not a real big one. As a matter of fact, it's very small. And WinBet is requesting to change their minimum wager from $1 to a penny. Would we like to vote on these individually or yes? Okay.
Yeah, so let's have a chance to discuss this. You see the WinBet's proposal. Any questions for Sterl? Sterl, do you want to give us any insights as to what's motivating the change?
I just think, especially since this is for most operators, especially in the online platform, it's just enjoyment for all their customers. If somebody would just like to place a wager for 10 cents, they can do so rather than having to risk $1. That's all.
Commissioner Maynard, I saw you nodding your head. I didn't mean to ask the question you may have had on your mind. Do you want to do it?
No, you asked the perfect question.
Thank you.
Why from $1 to a penny?
Any other questions? Any follow-up? All right. Commissioners, do we want, I spoke, but I do think it makes sense, given they're all very different proposals, that we do them one at a time. Do we have a motion on this? Or any further discussion before there's a motion? Okay.
Madam Chair, I would move that the commission approve the amendments to the House rules submitted by WinBet as included in the commissioner's packet and discussed here today.
Second.
Thank you, commissioners. Any further questions, edits? Okay. Commissioner O'Brien.
Aye.
Commissioner Hill.
Aye.
Commissioner Maynard. You're on mute.
Aye.
Thank you, and I vote yes, so 4-0. Thank you, Sterl.
Thank you.
Moving on.
Yep, moving on to Caesars Sportsbook. They are proposing the following changes. They updated language for their bonus bet. They updated their language on rounding. They updated their language for team racing to record language for baseball. They have added cycling, volleyball, and softball. So the first change is from a bet credit. They changed just the wording from bet credit to bet bonus, and then their bonus cash is removed. Now, I know everyone will be reminded of their item number 2 is their updated language for rounding. So I remember when we first reviewed their house rules, they wanted to round up and round down, and we said it was okay to round up. They are now changing from what they've originally proposed, that they will now pay off all calculations for retail bets will not be rounded, and they would be paid to the penny, to the exact amount. The third bullet is their language to team race for record language. And they changed from, and then it's just being removed. This is a clarification on their part. And then their items 4 was, in addition, they're allowing the wagering on cycling. As we go further down on volleyball, they're adding volleyball with all of their rules, and then they're adding softball in item 6. I'll stop here and ask if there are any questions.
Can I just ask a clarifying question, Sterl? The cycling, volleyball, and softball, what they're adding, that's already been approved by the commission as part of the events catalog?
Yes.
Yes.
They all those events are approved. They will, of course, have to follow that offering that they can't offer an unapproved event, but those 3 are approved events. Yes.
Questions, commissioners, for Sterl? Commissioner O'Brien's just shifting, I think, to a computer, so.
Madam Chair,
Oh, yes, Commissioner Maynard.
first a comment. I think that it's good for the patrons that they're going to get their money to the penny, so I appreciate that change. And then a question, Sterl, did you see anything in those approved categories, rules that gave you pause, or anything you wanted to point out to us on any of the changes?
No, I did not. The one that caught my eye was the rounding, and because we had that, the removal was, and the changing of wording is, they update constantly, especially in marketing. It changes very frequently, so they'll call it reward points or tier points, or each person and each operator will constantly change what they're referring to their promotions as. So that will probably come again and again to the commission once they make those changes. And as for those 3 events, we just made sure that they were all covered in our events catalog, and that, as stated, they in turn, Caesars will have to make sure they don't offer an unapproved event and have to follow our catalog of those events to make sure that the governing body is the correct one.
Follow-up question, Commissioner Maynard? You thinking?
Just thinking.
We have time. While Commissioner Maynard is contemplating, I just want, when you were doing your verbal update, Sterl, I think you might have said bet bonus, but it's bonus bet. They're getting rid of both bet credit that was out there and bonus cash. And
if I misspoke, I apologize. Bet credit is what used to be stated, and they're changing it to bonus bet, and then bonus cash was removed.
Yeah. So I'm glad that they changed the bet credit. So I'm glad that they were proactive rather than us bringing it to their attention. So that's excellent.
Yep, I agree.
Okay. Anything else? Commissioner O'Brien, are you able to hear us? Are you in transit?
Nope. They're just still booting it up. I've been following everything. I like the change of language. I would say for future discussion, I think for us as a commission, when I was driving yesterday to Everett to go over the public safety report, there was an ad by one of the licensees, and they talked about their bonuses and then talked about win or lose sort of being the guarantee, so to speak, on it, which is not the words risk-free, but I think is something that we might want to think about as they're moving away from some of this language, the win or lose language, not relevant to Caesars and what's before us, but I just didn't want to forget to bring that up.
What were the words exactly, Commissioner?
Win or lose. Sort of like you're getting this win or lose.
You're getting the credit, the promotional credit. Yeah.
So that's not using the words risk-free, free cash, it's not using any of that, but just did strike me as I was listening to it that the implication is risk-free with that phrase. But it was not a Caesar's ad.
Okay, so we'll put that in the parking lot for now, and Bruce and team can look into that along with legal.
Mm-hmm. But I don't have any questions about beyond what's been asked and answered right now on Caesars.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Anything else, Commissioner Hill? You all set?
All set.
Okay, do you want to move? Are you prepared to move, Commissioner?
I am. I don't want to be hogging up all these, but I'd be more than
You
happy
do.
to move that the commission approve the amendments to the House rules submitted by Caesar Sportsbook as included in the commissioner's packet and discussed here today.
I'll hog the second.
I'm delighted with all this hogging. Okay. Any questions or edits? Commissioner O'Brien,
Aye.
Commissioner Hill,
Aye.
Commissioner Maynard,
Aye.
and I vote yes. Excellent job. Let's go, Sterl.
Okay, this brings us to BetMGM's proposed changes. So BetMGM has proposed the following changes: teasers, which is only offered in their online as an online provider. They remove the language, become a single bet on the remaining team. For teaser payouts, odds are based on the odds of each line at the time of bet placement. Instead, they changed it to be canceled in the event one selection's results is in a push, a cancellation, or void. So what this language is doing is it's clarifying exactly what will happen in regards to the teaser, where the other line prior used to be a little ambiguous, I guess they felt, so they wanted to try and make it clearer for the patron. Number two, a baseball mercy rule. On page 12 of theirs is they did not have this prior. And then now two, a baseball mercy rule. If a game ends by the relevant league's mercy rule, then all wagers will be settled according to the results at a time the mercy rule is applied. This will include softball. So I am unaware of a mercy rule in MLB, but I'm sure we have more than the MLB. This would only apply to some league that is already approved in the event catalog. It is not my knowledge of a league that does offer this, but obviously BetMGM felt the need to add this. Number three, it was found through review that they failed to remove esports as asked in the beginning, and have proceededly updated and removed all references to any event that is not in the jurisdiction of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Sterl, can I ask, am I missing that in the memo? What page are you on?
I'm on page 41. The memo was updated, maybe.
Okay, my apologies. No, it's just me.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. So of course that now is removed, all of that language. It also had NASCAR as well. So section 4 is under football player futures. So again, just clarification language is be active in week 1 was removed to play at least one snap in the regular season. So just to be active for a game does not mean that the person has actually played, right? So this is actually making it, I guess, fair, more for the consumer, right? So you could have somebody that's active and then not take the field. Not really fair for someone wagering if they didn't participate, right? So playing at least one snap in the football game would require that they participated in the game, right? So number 5, a player's season specials, be active week 1 of the regular season, and players are not required to be active for week 1 of these wagers. To stand is now clarified again to play at least one snap in the regular season for bets on their individual performance to stand. Else bets are canceled. Wagers are also available to who will achieve the most for each statistic. And that was on their update to page 47. So 46 softball rules, and that once again, I'm sorry.
Do you mind, could we just pause for a minute, just because it's a little bit of a lengthier one?
Mhm.
Questions so far for Sterl or clarifications before he gets too deep into the.
I don't have a question, Madam Chair. I do have a comment regarding the, let me make sure I get the right language. Bear with me.
Mhm.
The mercy rule. I have seen that happen in amateur sports, and if you go 10 runs in 5 innings, it's a mercy rule. I can't even imagine what this is going after, and I didn't know if there was an example, but you said no, you can't find one either. Just interesting. I learned something new every day. That's my comment.
Yes, to your point, Commissioner Hill, I looked and I did not see a mercy rule in the areas that I was able to find, like, college World Series, college softball, college baseball, I know professional. I've seen, unfortunately, the Red Sox be losing 15 runs in the first inning.
Yeah.
Before. But yeah, they have no mercy for those leagues. But BetMGM is well aware they cannot offer anything that is not approved by our game.
So just for educational purposes, could you reach out to BetMGM? And not for today's purposes, but just for curiosity for the future. I would love to know if there's such a league that actually does this. I'm just curious, that's all.
Yes, I will.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioners, I do have a question, sort of overarching question that maybe legal can help on too. If right now these are proposals from individual operators, to the extent that the proposal is like one that we would think about as a best practice, should we be recommending that the other operators adopt those into their house rules? I'm trying to think of our process here. And the one I was thinking about, and I have no idea how the other commissioners feel, but I wonder about the betting on the single athlete who doesn't actually end up on the field short of one snap. What is the appropriate process? As these changes come through, do we make a note and then revisit them? Do we wait for other operators to be hearing what other operators are doing? I don't love that. I know that they are not uniform, but we have required some rules at the beginning that they had to all adopt. And for instance, the rounding was one example. Thoughts? This is because we do our work together in public. Sometimes this is how it has to go. We can't necessarily settle these matters in advance. Commissioner?
Madam Chair, I think my biggest, to your point, I think my biggest question here and what keeps popping into my head looking at these over the last few days and then again this morning is, why? The question of why. Why are these changes being proposed and kind of educating on who it benefits? I mean, we want to make sure that in every place we can, we're making sure that we're thinking about the consumer. And so understanding how these changes affect the consumer. So that's something I would like to know every time these are updated.
So
I would agree with that. I mean, if there's a reason that MGM or anybody else is coming in and clarifying, to the extent that it can eliminate confusion and make sure that everyone's protected, it is something we should probably be looking at across the board.
So maybe to Executive Director Wells, this might be an opportunity to develop a sort of a standardized approach on these kinds of changes so that, for instance, now we're hearing commissioners want to understand the why. Then I guess my question would be, oh, great idea, really important practice. Do we standardize it, in moving forward and move forward where we require it. Todd, is there any reason that's not the right approach for, the ones I'm thinking of, Sterl, that we did most recently was the rounding where you noticed that there was some degree of maybe common interest. Todd, would that be something that we could require of all of the operators if we like it?
Absolutely. I think, you'll recall that we have a regulation that sets out the general topics that have to be addressed in the house rules. They're more of a performance-based nature, but we could make them a little bit more prescriptive in certain areas, if that would be helpful. So that's right in 247.02. And all the issues that have come up today are generally addressed, but not specifically. So we could make the regulations more specific in these areas.
And if we learn that, for instance, the why, and that becomes clear, then we'll know that, well, it should be applied more universally. Okay. And any other, as we think about these as we're going through, that's why I sort of interrupted. And I like Commissioner Hill's question. I interrupted because I'm thinking about the process that's going to serve us and the patrons the best. Commissioner Hill, what are you thinking? Oh, Commissioner Maynard, maybe it was you first, and then Commissioner
Hill can go first.
No, go ahead, Commissioner Maynard.
I was just going to say, even to this exact example today, I noticed that the mercy rule showed up in certain places, and in certain places it's not. And then on the folks who aren't changing their rules, I don't know what their mercy rule says, and it's not lost upon me that the season just started. So I'm thinking, what happened that we're talking about the mercy rule, right? So that's a good example of if I could see the differences. And to your point, Madam Chair, is it a question of, do we apply the mercy rule across the board? Do we not? How's it being treated? I mean, that would be helpful.
Commissioner Hill.
Yeah, nothing to add to that, Madam Chair. The big question is why. And I think in the future, when these come before us, if we can get that answer, that would be good for all of us.
Why, and I suppose it becomes through Sterl's, Sterl's explanation, the impact. So, Commissioner O'Brien, any thoughts that you would like to see besides why, and then maybe next steps, if any, for standardization, maybe why and what's the impact? Anything?
Nothing additional. I mean, I think the understanding the why, so we can determine what the baseline is that we want to have consistent across all the licensees, makes the most sense to me to avoid confusion.
Excellent. All right. So sorry, Sterl, you were on a roll, but I think we're going into another big section here. So I'll let you continue if there are no particular questions on what he's covered, further particular questions on what he's covered so far. Okay, excellent. Thank you, Sterl.
No problem. So again, softball rules were from nothing. They're adding softball rules. Now, also in the softball rule is the mercy rule once again. Like I said, I investigated both our the website for the softball that we
yes, sir.
The softball leagues that we use, and I did not see them in their initial scans. But like I said, they might be preparing for something then which they will propose at a future date. I will reach out, as Commissioner Hill said, to BetMGM for a clarification on where this mercy rule came from. And then finally, Section 7, all future rules. They added a line 5, and that bets on future markets, which have been unconditionally determined, will be settled as such unless otherwise specified in the specific sports betting rules. I believe that is addressing when future markets were becoming official and then settling. they're getting greater clarity. And I will stop there because that's the end of the online proposal. And again, I will stop for any questions.
Questions for Sterl so far on this? Okay. Sterl, I'm just looking at my agenda. Do we have a motion for Sterl? With respect to the bet MGM, those changes.
I can move.
Thank you.
I move that the commission approve the amendments to the House rules submitted by BetMGM as included in the commissioner's packet and discussed here today.
Second.
Thank you. Any further questions or edits regarding that? Commissioner O'Brien.
Aye.
Commissioner Hill.
Aye.
Commissioner Maynard.
Aye.
I vote yes. So 4-0. Thank you. Thanks, Sterl. And now the final.
Madam Chair, before we go on to the next one, I have been doing some Googling as we've been discussing these things, which I probably shouldn't do, but
multitasking.
it looks as though the mercy rule is used in the NCAA for softball. It's called an 8-run rule, but of course we don't allow college betting here. But with that said, there is a mercy rule in apparently some NCAA softball leagues. I have not been able to find any professional baseball or college baseball yet, but apparently it does exist, Sterl.
So it appears that they're addressing, I was searching as mercy, and it sounds as though in college softball, it's called an 8-run rule. So that I was searching for it correctly. So thank you so much. They must, and especially since it was reiterated in softball wagering, it must be in the NCAA softball rules. Thank you.
And if you can hold on one more moment, there is a couple in baseball, but again, I can't tell if it says there's no mercy rule in AAA or MLB baseball due to professional competition, but there are things, and it looks like there may be some in college as well for baseball. Just curious. So I'm done, Madam Chair.
So I guess the question I have is, are there playoffs where you're going to have 4 or more competing that this is relevant to Mass, or is this not relevant to us?
I believe they do have Big East tournaments in softball. Actually, I watch it on ESPN all the time.
Yeah.
It's quite entertaining if you're into baseball and softball.
And remember, so softball can be wagered upon if LSU is playing against some other team, just as long as they're not from the college of Massachusetts, right?
Yeah.
So I think that answers our question, or at least halfway. Sorry to interrupt again, Madam Chair.
That's okay. You're reminding me of a great clip I saw maybe 2 weeks ago. Did you see where the softball player hit a home run? She was making her way around the bases and had an injury, and her teammates couldn't help her. That's the rule. And the other team helped her around the bases so that she scored. It was a testament to great sportsmanship. That caught my eye. Maybe that's why they have the mercy rule. Okay. The softball is excellent viewing, Commissioner Hill. We'll move on then. Just want to make sure I haven't lost track. We did get through that MGM. We're turning now to MGM Springfield commissioners.
Correct.
Which is, I've been scrolling, so now it's on page
43.
43. Yeah.
All right, and so just as a knowledge, you're going to hear the exact same things for Springfield. BetMGM does most of the rules for them as well. It handles a lot of, there's a lot of interaction between the two organizations. What you will not see is the removal of esports, since it was not included as an error. So again, the baseball mercy rule on page 12 was added. And section 2, the football player's future. Again, removal of being active for week 1 to playing at least 1 snap. Section 3, the player's season specials on page 45, again, from being active week 1, and players are not required to be active for week 1. For these wagers to stand, too, a player must play at least 1 snap in the regular season for bets on their individual performances to stand. Else bets are canceled, and wagers are also available on who will achieve for the most for each statistic. Again, softball rules were added, so from they weren't there to all of their softball rules. And that final stipulation on all future rules was added on number 5 of bets on future markets will have been unconditionally determined will be settled as such unless otherwise specified in the specific sports betting's rule.
Questions for Sterl? Commissioners? I think Commissioners, we got 2's nodding, they're all set. Commissioner Maynard, are you also all set? Or do you have any questions? Okay, Sterl, thank you. Do we have thank you, Commissioner Hill. I like the thumbs up. Do we have a motion, Commissioners?
Madam Chair, I move that the commission approve the amendments to the House rules submitted by MGM Springfield as included in the commissioner's packet and discussed here today.
Second.
Any questions or edits? Okay, Commissioner O'Brien.
Aye.
Commissioner Hill?
Aye.
Commissioner Maynard?
Aye.
And I vote yes, so 4-0. So that gets us through the approval of the House rules. And now we're going to turn to item 4E on the agenda, which is the approval of new events for the sports wagering catalog. This has been an evolving item on the agenda. Before we get started, Commissioners, I would like to make a recommendation. I would like you to think about it. We do have in front of us one concerning a request regarding or relevant to our very own Boston Marathon that will be coming up. Because of that timeliness, I would recommend that we move forward with that matter. But well, I appreciate we've got a lot of information before us with respect to the other potential catalog additions. I am wondering if we should think about an expanded process that would allow for opportunity for public comment from interested members of our communities, including, of course, the athletic community, as well as other stakeholders and, if interested, governing bodies. And if so, if you're in agreement, I would like to make the recommendation that we address just the first one before us and then turn to those others at a future public meeting. And I'd ask Director Wells to perhaps work with the sports division on developing that process and then outlining it to us so that we can kind of standardize the approach on this. Commissioners? Commissioner O'Brien.
No, I would agree with that. And in part, the introduction of the matters that were requested for today, particularly the Boston Marathon. And my first reaction was, what's the position of the BAA? And that's not something that's in our reg right now. And I think that's something, in addition to the process, I do think we need to go back and look at the reg and look at what exactly the criteria are that we're asking for when we're going to be making changes to the events catalog. So we did get input last night from the BAA on that particular topic. I would like to know more about each event as it comes forward in terms of what it is, what the athletes are that participate in it, what's the position of the governing body, that sort of thing. And I do think when you get into some of these newer, more obscure requests, for me, that is relevant in terms of, it's not is there a reason to keep it out? For me, I look at it, is there a reason to put it in? So that to me is probably going to require more information than the first wave that was sort of a long-standing request that people had put in front of us.
Commissioner Hill.
I couldn't be, I agree 100%. The first, after getting some correspondence from constituents and the BAA and things of that sort, if anything, we can be the most proud of is the fact that we do everything in public, and we ask a lot of questions pertinent to what the subject matter is that's in front of us. We don't have a lot of information on this one. And transparency is something that I'm so proud of on this board. And I think in this case, we need to be very transparent and get as much information as we can. So full agreement at this point. I'm not comfortable or ready to take a position on allowing this into the sports catalog. I'd like to get a lot more information and be able to talk to both sides of the request on this.
And if I'm could just go back to my recommendation, if we could just isolate the discussion around the request concerning Boston Marathon, you're okay having that discussion today, yes, but isolate the rest. Okay. Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Commissioner Maynard.
Madam Chair, I'm happy to isolate the Boston Marathon discussion. The only thing I would add to what's already been said, which I agree with completely on the others, is that I would like additional information on what their events look like, right? I don't know what the equivalent Masters is on the mini golf tournament, right? And what the dates are for that. And so that would be, I appreciate that information too, but I definitely want to see, what do the leagues think? What do the players think? And how's it going to affect the consumer? I will say to Commissioner O'Brien that the word obscure, I did have an opportunity to play a professional mini golf course once in Florida. It was harder than the golf courses I play here. So it's not a question of that. It's a question of what are the parameters around it, and what's the opinion of those who participate.
So I think I heard some different ideas, Secretary Director Wells, as to items or interest or approaches. So if maybe we develop a process, come back, and then that will actually, I think, really help the sports division too. We need to give additional guidance here. So
yeah, I've got the note from the comments, so we can do that, absolutely.
Excellent, thank you. All right, so with that, Manager Carpenter, do you want to get started in terms of the requests that came in with respect to the Boston Marathon? And before we discuss that, I think it's okay for us to pause and remember that this is a very special year for this particular event, and we all hold dear the memories of those who were lost 10 years ago. So just wanted to point that out. I suppose I should also, full disclosure, that I do have an adult daughter who will be running the Boston Marathon this year. I don't think she's relevant to this particular request, but she would love to surprise you. All righty, but she will be coming in, not in the rankings that's before us. So thank you.
Okay, so DraftKings reached out to us and requested the Boston Marathon be adopted into the catalog for consideration. They filled out all a new league request in which they provided all the information regarding 247.03, in which we look for the definitions and leagues and governing bodies all to be accepted prior to voting on whether to allow a new league or event to be wagered on in this Commonwealth of Massachusetts. In your packet on page 45, it starts with the listed and relevant sections of 247. And I will stop here if there is anything in particular you wish to go through, or a guide of how you would like to continue speaking on this event.
I think we want to point out too that we did receive that comment from the governing body. Perhaps it might be worth us sharing that as part of today's important discussion. In terms of the request.
Is it the end of the packet?
Yes. Do you want me to share that, Chair, or no?
I think in a second. I just wondered,
Okay.
Commissioners, do you want Sterl to walk you through, or have you had the chance to walk through the Commissioner O'Brien right ahead?
No, like I said, I had an initial question when I first saw it in the catalog, and we got the comment last night. I believe we had another public comment that came in, I think, right before the meeting in a similar vein.
Yes.
To the one we got last night. So,
that was a member of the public, right?
A member of the public, not the BAA.
And
it was in addition to the
BAA.
BAA.
But
So I
in
think
terms
sharing
of
the BAA's position would be helpful since it was added to the packet late.
right. So I guess I'm just wondering, before we just share that, is there anything in terms of the DraftKings request that you are seeking some clarification from Sterl or Bruce? It's pretty straightforward, right? Okay. I think it makes sense to share that. And Director Wells, that came into us late last evening. If you just want to walk us through it a little bit, that'd be great.
Do you want me to share the comment?
Either one. Yeah, whoever can easiest.
You've got it, Sterl?
Sterl's got it.
Okay.
So it starts here. Is this big enough, or I can just about
You can
fit
make it a tad bigger. That would be great, please.
Sure.
Okay. Okay. So just to point out, if you want to just say who it's coming in from and you just want to highlight, that'd be great.
So yeah, it came in from Scott Stover. I hope I pronounced his name correctly, and he's the Chief Marketing Officer from the Boston Athletic Association.
So the highlights, Director Wells, first paragraph would be.
Yes, so basically they have received media inquiries. They were not consulted in the matter of concerns related to the proposal, as the Boston Marathon's only 12 days away. They've been preparing for this for more than a year. They've worked with countless constituents, and I can say from my past experience at EOPS, the organization is phenomenal at working with many different groups to have this event go forward. And they've indicated there's really not enough time for them to coordinate and fully ensure proper protocols are in place to support such a proposal for wagering on their event. They're concerned about how an expedited approval would potentially impact the event. And their concerns that until they can complete due diligence, they're but they're not limited to ensuring event security and potential influence on the outcome of the race. In addition, they indicated that the Boston Marathon is a trademark and protected name, and the Boston Athletic Association not granted permission to use this trademark in relation to the proposal. So they indicated thanks for the consideration, but the bottom line is they are asking that this not be part of the events catalog.
Okay. Commissioners, are you all set? I know you've had the chance to read it. It's in the public packet, and that is the governing body. And just for the purpose of public interest, one of the very critical components of our approving events is to make sure that the governing body can ensure the integrity of the event purpose of outcome and vetting. So in this case, we've heard directly from the governing body. Commissioner O'Brien.
So I believe that this should not be added to the catalog at this point. I mean, the BAA has made itself very clear. The fact that DraftKings didn't reach out to them at all, the concerns they raised about the integrity of the parameters, the trademark issues, to me, make it clear that this shouldn't be in the catalog. Above and beyond that, the concern that I have is DraftKings seems to represent in the request that they are asking that this be bet on in any other jurisdiction that they're live. We don't have jurisdiction over them necessarily in those other states, but I would point out the same challenges would be present in DraftKings, who's a licensee here, taking those. I'm not a patent lawyer, I'm not a trademark attorney, but there's also some questions there. And to the extent that we oversee them and our licensee, I question the judgment of going forward where the governing body has so clearly expressed a lack of communication and a concern with going forward. And I know that the matter before us is just our catalog, but I did want to comment in a broader sense on what was represented in the request.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, I'm sorry to jump in. I just wanted to, if I may, point out that there is a statute and regulation that discusses this scenario. And to Commissioner O'Brien's point, it is important that certain comment be received. So this is addressed specifically in Chapter 23N, Section 11, Paragraph B, which talks about comments from the sports governing body. It does say that the Commission shall request comment from operators on all such requests. And then we have regulations that directly address this. It's in 247.04, and it sets out the reasons under which you would deny such a request. One of them is that it may undermine the perceived integrity of the governing body or the event. And there's a series of other considerations as well. And then ultimately it says the Commission shall grant the request, meaning in this case from the BAA, upon good cause shown, or deny the request otherwise. And then there's a whole process outlined in the regulations that govern requests like this. And only because this came in last night, we didn't have a chance to brief this in the packet, but it is actually addressed in our procedure.
Is there any way we could pause, if you could pull the statutory language and the reg in front of us? One question, if I'm be reminded, in terms of making a request for an event to be approved by us, it's very open-ended. It can be any person, correct? Am I?
No, that is correct. We do have a whole procedure for approving events, and the DraftKings one, I didn't have a chance to really review it carefully, but certainly the next one actually follows, and it looks like maybe Sterl put it together, but it exactly follows the reg. But yes, we do have a whole procedure as to how to get events into the catalog.
And so I think that was my point again about standardizing and having come up with a template so that we make sure that we do, give the requesting party the opportunity to meet all of our regulatory standards, or else not make that request, right? But in this case, what I'm hearing you say is wouldn't be a denial, if that's the way the Commission were to vote, of the DraftKings request, but rather an acceptance of BAA's request.
Since there was,
Well, one moment, please, Commissioner. I just will let our lawyer tell us, and then I'll go to you at first. So thanks, Todd.
sure. So if there hadn't been any message from the BAA, there is a procedure in place in which we most likely would have reached out to them to get any input they had to offer. Since there was a comment submitted by the BAA, there's a specific regulation that addresses what we do in that scenario. And it would require at least some public comment, or not public comment, but comment from the operators before you were to move forward on that particular request. So I think as of today, based on I'll call it an objection, if you will, it wouldn't be prudent to put it in the catalog based on that alone. And I think there's a process to be followed. If we hadn't received it, it might be slightly different, but I don't think we'd necessarily need to address it on the marathon issue. And it's all spelled out, and I realize it's hard to do this in real time, but it's all in section 247.04, and we can look through that as well.
Commissioners, Commissioner O'Brien, did you want to add now? I just wanted to have him complete his thought. Thanks.
Right. So I mean, I think as presented on the agenda, it was a request from DraftKings under the reg to add an event catalog. So to me, there's a question of adjudication on that. There's a separate sort of a standing as of right, so to speak, that can be executed by the governing bodies. And in this case, the BAA did that by giving us the public comment, objecting to the inclusion into the catalog. And so I guess my view on it is you've got two processes going on, one of which is following up in the adjudication of the exercise of that objection by the BAA. There's also the question of the request itself, which, given the timing of it, et cetera, I feel like we're in a position to adjudicate this either to abstain or in the negative, the request from DraftKings directly, wholly independent of moving under 247.04, which to me, if we're going to be doing motions under that, we would want more briefing, and I'd want to be able to look at the reg. So my question and my position would be that it seems we can't really adjudicate this in the positive or the affirmative because of the right that has been asserted by the BAA under 247.04, but we could dispose of the request via motion in the negative, denying the addition into the catalog based on what was on the agenda and what was submitted by the operator.
So what I would like to do with that, Commissioner O'Brien and commissioners, is to pause our meeting. It's 12:09. Give legal the opportunity to get the relevant statutory language together, relevant regulatory standards together, so that we can walk through these and understand the extent of our decision, what we can do. And then we maybe before I pause, commissioners, if I could take the temperature. Understanding that there's a framework that we would have to operate in, but generally speaking, if we view DraftKings as making an affirmative request to allow for sports betting on this year's Boston Marathon, are you inclined, and this is, of course, we can still change our mind, it's just a straw vote, taking the temperature, inclined to give a thumbs up and green light, or to say not at this time? Commissioner Hill?
I'm not inclined to support it at this point. I'll use my favorite phrase, not ready for prime time.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Brien, I think you've stated it, that your position is Commissioner Maynard.
Same. I think that this isn't ready.
Yeah. And I feel exactly the same way, and it was already noted that there was no outreach to this governing body, which is actually quite local. So there was an opportunity perhaps to get a little clarity. So if we could just pause does that make sense, to just make sure that we're following the framework that we've adopted? This is happening in rather real time. And come back, Todd, would it work if we came back in 15 minutes? Does that work for you? Sure. Want a bargain?
Make it 20. No,
All right.
15 is fine. That's fine. I'm just joking.
Okay, well, we come back.
And then just grab something for lunch quickly and keep moving.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we have one other matter after this.
Right.
All right, so why don't we grab a bite to eat and make it a short bite because it will be a relatively short meeting. So we'll come back around 12:30. Is that okay, Commissioner O'Brien?
Yep.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Hey, Bruce, you want to turn off your video, please, and your audio?
I'm
Thanks.
doing it right now.
Okay, Dave? Everybody able to get a quick bite of some sort?
All set.
Thanks, Dave. Okay, so this is reconvening a public meeting number 447 of the Massachusetts Gaming Commission. And because we're holding this meeting virtually, we'll do a roll call. Commissioner O'Brien.
I am here.
Excellent. Commissioner Hill.
I'm here.
Commissioner Maynard.
I'm here.
4-0. Yes, I'm here. So we're going to return to our agenda. And we were just turning to 4E, and we took a straw vote on our position with respect to the request from DraftKings to allow for betting on the Boston Marathon. And we do have a framework that I know that there's plans now that we can institutionalize as part of our process going forward. And Todd, if you were able to use those few minutes to maybe give us a little bit of a reminder of our release.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. I actually just kind of called out some of the governing provisions from the statute and the regulations that I thought I might should show you really quickly, if that's okay, to help guide the decision making here.
Thank you.
So, okay.
If possible, to make that a little bigger, Todd, I would appreciate that, please.
Sure, of course. Hold on a second. Okay, there we go. Is that better? Okay. So the first thing to just take a look at is the definition of sports governing body. This is actually set out in the statute and our regs by way of the statute. And it's an organization that is headquartered in the United States and prescribes final rules and enforces codes of conduct with respect to a sporting event and participants therein. It appears as though the BAA would certainly meet this definition, just for starters. And that's important because that term, sports governing body, is used in a number of places in the regs that we'll take a quick look at here. The first series of regulations in 247.03 governs just the process for the approval of a particular sporting event or wager category. And again, I only pulled out the provisions that I thought were most relevant to this particular discussion. There are a few other things, and they're actually contained in the memo that Sterl included in the packet. But just for purposes of this review, the first thing just to note, as the chair pointed out already, is that any person may petition the commission for approval of a new sporting event or wager category. And so the petition that came in itself was from an appropriate place. In determining whether to grant such petition, there are a series of considerations that the regulations direct the commission to look at. And these are just minimum criteria. There are other things that can be taken into account as well. But as you can see here, the four that are articulated in the regulations are whether the outcome of the event can be verified, the event generating the outcome is conducted in a manner that ensures sufficient integrity controls exist so the outcome can be trusted, the outcome is not likely to be affected by any sports wager placed, and D, the sporting event is conducted in conformity with all applicable laws. So those are the four that we've set out, but of course there are other considerations that may factor in depending upon the particular request. Paragraph 5 says that the commission will consider the request and provided materials and any relevant input from the sports governing body or the conductor of the sporting event prior to authorizing a sporting event or wager category. And so since we do have an actual comment, it must be reviewed, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. But this is, I think, gets to what the commission discussed earlier. If we're going to set up an actual protocol, Instead of just noting that the commission will consider it, perhaps we add language that says that we shall elicit it in order to be aware of what the governing body may say about a particular event. And then 12 says that the commission may use any information it considers appropriate, including but not limited to information received from a sports governing body in determining whether to authorize or prohibit wagering on a particular sporting event or wagering category. So these are the relevant provisions that guide and govern the commission's decision-making as to whether to authorize a particular event or category of wagers in general. As it pertains to the matter before you, the Boston Marathon specifically, it's also important to look at the next section of the regulations, which is in 247.04. And this is the area that talks about prohibiting wagers for good cause. This section I will represent to you is modeled after a provision of the general laws, which is referenced right in the regulation. It's section 11B. And that's where this regulation specifically came from. It's directed by statute. And then it says that a sports governing body or related players association, but in this case, we're dealing with the sports governing body, may request in writing that the commission restrict, limit, or exclude a certain type, form, or category of sports wagering with respect to sporting events of the sports governing body. If the sports governing body or players association believes that such type, form, or category of sports wagering with respect to sporting events of the sports governing body, and then there's a series of considerations. Either A, is contrary to public policy, B, is unfair to patrons, C, may undermine the perceived integrity of the sports governing body, sporting events of the sports governing body, or athletes participating therein, or D, affects the integrity of the sports governing body, sports events of the sports governing body, or athletes are participating therein. So those are the reasons under which a sports governing body may submit such a request to the commission. Section 2 says that the request must be submitted in a particular form. I believe that I just included this so you can see that there is an actual form that the request has to come in. It appears as though the request received from the BAA generally meets this criteria. And then paragraph 3 gets into the decision making. And the regulations say the commission shall grant the request, meaning the request coming from the BAA in this case, upon good cause shown, or deny the request otherwise. Provided, however, that if the commission determines that the requester is more likely than not to make a showing of good cause, the commission may provisionally grant the request until the commission makes a final determination as to whether the requester has shown good cause. So even if you're not 100% certain today, you may provisionally grant the BAA's request not to offer wagering on the marathon at this juncture. And it's important just to look at some of these other paragraphs before you make that decision. And paragraph 4 says, if the request concerns a particular sporting event, as is the case here, it must be sent to the commission at least 10 days before the event, which this one has, unless the event involves allegations of match fixing and other things which don't apply here. Section 5, the commission shall grant or deny any request concerning a particular sporting event received at least 10 days before the event. So the regs direct that the decision be made before the event takes place, where this request has come in 10 days before the event. Otherwise, the commission may grant or deny any request within 14 days. And the final provision that I wanted to bring to your attention is section 6 here, which says that upon receiving a complete request under section 247.041, the commission shall request comment from sports wagering operators on all such requests in writing. The request shall include the date by which any written responses must be submitted to the commission. All sports wagering operators must be given an opportunity which is reasonable under all the circumstances to respond to the request. And I will say to you that this is based upon a provision of the statute. So those are all of the governing provisions of the regulations and the statute that pertain to this particular request by the BAA, so that you can kind of have a structured review of this request and enter a decision here today if you're so inclined. So with that, I think that covers all the sections that I thought would be helpful to cover, and I'll stop there, Madam Chair and Commissioners. If there are any questions, happy to address those at this point.
Questions for Todd in terms of the process? Director Wells?
I just have one question, Todd. Under this process, could the commission deny the, or I guess it's accept the BAA's request to not allow the betting on the Boston Marathon today? Or do we need to give operators a chance to respond and then have that set up for a further date? Because that seemed to be what the reg says, but I want to make sure I'm correct there.
Yeah, I think that the commission could at least provisionally grant the request or deny it, so that you can allow for others to comment on it and allow even the BAA to more fully respond to this particular request. And that way it's a live issue. We're not denying it outright. But that seems to be, again, this is of course the first time we've been navigating this, but I think that seems to be the process that was contemplated.
Well, so go ahead, Madam Chair. Okay, so because what I'm seeing is that there's two competing things that the commission could act upon. There's the petition from DraftKings, and what I understand is the commission today could deny that petition.
Right.
But hypothetically, if the BAA had just submitted something saying, hey, we don't want any wagering on the Boston Marathon, then that would trigger the necessity for the opportunity for the operators to hear. But since I'm not sure, that seems confusing.
Odd construct.
Yeah.
Because I guess what my thought would be to build on that is, if I understand under 247.03, we could deny and take into consideration the input that we got from the governing body.
Right.
Because we certainly wouldn't want it to be, well, you weighed in, so therefore you only get a provisional decision. That would be an odd outcome.
I think that's fair. Absolutely. I think that's exactly right. I think you could deny the request outright, and then maybe tee it up for future review and resubmission.
But why would we have?
Well, that's not. That's part of my frustration with that bifurcated process. And maybe I wasn't clear when I said this before the break. I don't know that we need to go down the 247.04 route. We have a request from DraftKings in front of us, and one of the things we consider is a public comment by the governing body. And one of the things they said is the lack of timeliness on this really makes it impossible for them because they're planning the event and they're at the last critical stages of planning. That in and of itself could lead to a denial by this commission, wholly apart from the fact that they've independently voiced an objection, which may or may not arise. It would really depend on whether another licensee sought to offer the event in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So it doesn't seem to me that we have to go down the 247.07 route. We can give a denial on this based on the reg that deals with anyone can come ask for this. So
247.03 alone.
Correct. I think 247.03 alone allows us to do that without getting mired in. It would seem to me to almost rise to the level of needing to be handled if the straw poll indicated we were going in another direction, which it does not seem to be that this body is doing.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. I don't think you're under any obligation to conduct any further proceedings other than the review today. But if someone were to come to you in the future, having vetted it more thoroughly, I think you could reconsider it at some point.
Well, the time is of the essence because we're narrowing into that window of 10 days, right?
I'm sorry, probably not this year, but
That's
in the
right,
future.
this year. So, but to be clear, can I just, because I was taking notes, it looks as though the commission will consider any relevant input from the governing body, but it doesn't have to have its decision based on input from the governing body. If we were to go against the governing body's recommendation, it seems to me we would be remiss to not go into 247.04.
I think that's exactly right. If there is an objection from a governing body, I think you have to honor it if there's good cause shown.
Yeah. What do you think, Commissioner Maynard? You're nodding your head.
Yeah, I think that's how I would look at it. I mean, I think we would have to go down that second route if we had an issue here amongst us. It seems like there's not. And I mean, I can go ahead and give my thoughts period. Let me know when you want our thoughts period, because I do have something for the record.
Yeah. Now let's just, Commissioner Hill, in terms of the structure, the regulatory structure, which we of course adopted, but it's been a little bit since we adopted it. So it's really, and of course the statute has dictated this, and you have to give the legislature credit for anticipating exactly the scenario. So here we are. Commissioner Hill.
I have nothing to add. I think 247.03 is what we should be doing today, and let's get it done.
Okay. Commissioner Maynard, you want to make a statement? Is that what I hear?
Well, I just want to on the record that, you know, there's few greater events than the Boston Marathon, and it's nationally known, but in the Commonwealth, it's very local, and it underpins a local holiday. And I'm going to respect this local organization's request to be included in the process that could potentially ever allow wagering on their event. And for that reason, I also respect that they don't think they can work out any issues in 12 days. And that seems reasonable. In short, you know, no matter, you know, what we look at here, I'm not going to allow under the first construct any catalog of any licensee, right, or catalog period that any licensee is going to follow to have to carry this event. It's not going to happen. So that's where I am.
Excellent. Commissioner O'Brien, you want to add in?
No, I agree with Commissioner Maynard that with any request, my expectation would be that an operator would reach out to the governing body, the Boston Marathon in particular, what it means to the city, and in particular on this year, 10 years out from the tragedy. I am disappointed, to say the least, that a local operator did not in fact do that. And I am absolutely inclined to listen to the organizers of the event, who have said even needing to respond to this is a distraction for them in getting ready for something that's going to be happening in a matter of days. So for me, this is not even a question that this shouldn't be put into a catalog at this point.
Thank you. And Commissioner Hill, anything else you wish to add?
No, not at this time.
Well, and I echo my fellow commissioners' sentiments. So the only thing I would like to clarify is that this did come to us rather abruptly too. And so we're sorting out our process, and to that process is memorialized in our regulation, but putting the regulation into effect. As you can see, we're working out a process that will be well memorialized. What I want to say is I very much appreciate BAA submitting its comments to us. And I think as part of our process, I don't think it's in our reg, but I might be wrong, Todd, that we probably institutionalize a comment period around these types of matters for maybe it's a 2-week, which reflects our general practice. We are always open for public comment, but for this, particularly if it's an event that hasn't been bet on before. So, you know, I think we will hope that we can institute that practice. So, again, to the interested parties, We thank you, and we thank you for your patience as we roll over the other ones for now. With that said, I think we should probably take a vote on this. Do I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that the commission deny the request to amend the official catalog of events and wagers to include the Boston Marathon as included in the commissioner's packet and discussed here today.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Hill. Okay, any edits or questions around that motion? We're all set. Okay, Commissioner O'Brien.
Aye.
Commissioner Hill.
Aye.
Commissioner Maynard.
Aye.
I vote yes. 4-0. Okay. We're next going to turn to a discussion from IEB and consider going into executive session. If I could have Director, and before, if we decide to go into executive session, I will make sure that we check in on just any commissioner updates or other business. But why don't we have Executive Director Wells and Director Lilios lead us on number 5. Please. Director Lilios. Director.
So, Karen, did you want to jump in, or?
Yeah, so I think the commission is looking at matters regarding temporary suitability, and there are certain standards for that. And there's some information that the IEB would like to give the commission. It may be detrimental to the investigation for that to be public at this point. So the request is that the commission hold executive session to have that discussion.
Director Lilios, any addition?
No, really, that captures it.
All right. Commissioners, in order to go into executive session for the reasons that Director Wells stated and Director Lilios has said he's in agreement, we would have to move forward affirmatively. And to do so, I have to read this language into the record. So I'll do so. The commission is anticipated to meet in executive session in accordance with GL Chapter 30A, Section 21A7, and GL Chapter 4, Section 7, Subsection 26F, to discuss investigatory materials related to the issuance of a sports wagering license necessarily compiled out of the public view by the IEB, the disclosure of which materials would probably so prejudice the possibility the effective law enforcement that such disclosure would not be in the public interest. The public session of the commission meeting will not convene at the conclusion of the executive session if we so vote. Commissioner O'Brien?
Madam Chair, I move that we go into executive session for the reasons stated by the chair in her summary.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, Commissioner O'Brien.
Aye.
Commissioner Hill.
Aye.
Commissioner Maynard.
Aye.
And I vote yes. So that's 4-0. Before we move into our virtual space, Dave, and I think that Roberta, you probably have organized that guest list with Dave, so he knows. Is there any other business or commissioner update?
Madam Chair, I actually have something. I was going through the schedule before we started this meeting, and I noticed that Thursday, May the 18th, we have a hold on the calendar for a full meeting. I thought that you had an event to go to that weekend, and I expected that hold to come off the calendar. You've always been really extremely accommodating to us and all the commissioners when we've had scheduling issues pop up. And I think that I can find another date that works, and I don't believe Thursdays are sacred cows. So I have some other availability. Just wanted to make sure that I had that correct, that that we are going to remove that hold on the 18th.
Well, I appreciate that. I have been invited to a wedding, and I'm very excited because Bruce Band just came from Charleston, and I'm looking forward to enjoying a little bit of what he enjoyed recently for a wedding and a very significant birthday. So that would help me out if it doesn't compromise our schedule. The only thing, I appreciate your request, Commissioner Maynard, very much, because I am in the midst of maybe making plane changes because I would do the meeting there, and I would have to change my flight if I'm going to do the meeting there. So Grace, can we maybe look at that schedule, and then unless there's a disagreement, and see if there's any dates that might work, and we can just circulate that. Commissioner Hill, Commissioner O'Brien.
Can you repeat the date, Commissioner Maynard?
It's Thursday, May the 18th.
That's the date.
I don't have a
schedule
conflict,
now.
but I don't have an issue trying to do workarounds if we have a couple conflicts either. So I don't know if it's something where Commissioner Hill, myself, and Commissioner Skinner are quorum, and there's sort of business at hand.
Oh, I could absolutely,
you know, I can make myself available, but I don't have an issue rescheduling either if the two of you have conflicts.
Same here. I'm all set.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner O'Brien. I did say at the agenda setting that I would go ahead and miss the meeting if there were a quorum. I appreciate Commissioner Maynard saying that if we could do another date, then I would be. It's the quarterly reports that I would want to hear. So anyway.
No, I can go either way. I'm available either way to move it or to go.
Thanks, Commissioner Hill. All right. So maybe Grace, you can work with the commissioners and see what we can find out. I'd appreciate that. And then I'll figure out. Appreciate Commissioner Maynard. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
And then Commissioner O'Brien, do you have an item?
I don't. I raised it earlier in terms of the language maybe we put on to discuss the win or lose language. That was the only thing I wanted to bring up.
Okay, and I'm just making sure that we've got that notation. And before we go to our executive session, I'll probably repeat this introduction, but we're turning to Grace Robinson, and I just want to formally introduce Grace, who is new to our team and is serving in an expanded role of being both the Chief Administrative Officer to the chair, as well as the help me out, Grace. It's
Special projects and external relations.
Yes, external relations, which will include our legislative functions. So Grace comes from a very, very fitting background. Grace joined the Baker administration on day one as a new college grad. And she was started off as a briefing coordinator for the governor and lieutenant governor, and then moved up as assistant director of operations, and then became deputy director for advanced special events, and then director of operations. And so she did serve the full time of the services to the Baker administration. And we are very pleased that she decided to apply for the position and has come in rather seamlessly. I think those of you who have been already working with her are recognizing that. So Grace, again, welcome to you, and thank you for all that you're doing to help us run things smoothly. Grace is the successor of, as everyone knows, Krista Boschman, who did such a fine job that she got herself a very nice promotion. We're very pleased that she is now under Director Ban in the management position for sports wagering business. So, we are pleased to have sent her off in that function to Director Wells. There was a little interim period and we were both pretty busy. So we know exactly the value that Crystal and Grace have brought to us. So thank you. Okay, so with that, Dave Souza, you have the magic of knowing how to transfer us into the virtual. To the public, we will not be reconvening, and so we thank you for your attention in this matter. And we'll go into our executive session now.
All right, so I have a list of everybody to go into the breakout rooms right now. So let me know if there are other people that need to go in. Let me just create and assign right now.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Dave. And thank you to all of you who contributed today.
Oh, that's not how it